Good morning. Welcome back to the Outer Circle Inner Stillness. Live from Gresham and where are you at these days?
Vancouver.
Vancouver. Live from both sides of the Columbia River.
Yes.
And on a very glorious late winter, rainy morning in February. Anyway, I'm Reese Pasimio, delighted to be here. And I have a good friend, longtime friend, Toni Hammer. And we're talking about humor, mental health, trauma, and other things, and why they all mix together and things like that. So maybe a little adjacent to some of the things we normally talk about. We talk about the heavy stuff, addictions, trauma, the nature of God. So we're talking about humor, but I think it relates. We'll find out how. All that to say, hello, Toni. Thank you for being here. And I wonder if you could say a little bit about who you are, kind of what brings you to conversations around the mental health and the inner life and things like that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, Reese. So the business is called If I'm Being Honest, and its mission, my mission, the mission is to spread mental health awareness and reduce the stigma around mental health and remind all of us that it's okay to laugh sometimes. I live with depression. I live with anxiety. And I've been through some really dark times, some really stressful times, some really overwhelming times. I had postpartum depression with both of my kids. I'm medicated. Thank you, Jesus, for Lexapro. I've been to therapy a couple times. Should probably go there soon again. And I've been a social media personality. I've had multiple social media related businesses. And what I've found is that people relate the most through humor. If you can make somebody laugh, you can get somebody to listen, and letting them know that, they're not alone. They're not the only one. And so my thought process with this whole thing is to create products and gifts and wares that help people feel seen and heard. And hopefully by helping them feel seen and heard and understood, that we can kind of open up that dialogue, either open up a dialogue kind of, but also just reduce the stigma around it and normalize it a little bit more.
Yeah, there is a way that when we can laugh about something, it's easier to talk about, or it can feel less oppressive or less offensive. Part of why storytelling is really powerful too. I can very easily kind of look at that kind of the darkness in my own self if I'm actually looking at Darth Vader or Frodo Baggins or Harry Potter or someone. So it can be a good inroad to really looking at myself. So yeah, I wonder. And I appreciate you sharing some of the highlights of your own growth journey and everything. And be curious a little bit more through that. I guess what led you to discover humor as something healthy. And I'm thinking of a couple ways humor can be used in unhealthy ways. But I'm curious how have you come to use humor in a good, healthy, uplifting way?
Yeah, it's hard to find that balance, right, between self-deprecating and then just self-aware. And I think that's a line that I'm still learning to walk, because I don't want to be oh my gosh, I'm so socially awkward because I'm an introvert or ADHD or whatever, and I'm a terrible person, versus, because I have a gift that says awkward but funny. And so it's finding that balance between being self-aware and also self-love, right? I can't change the fact that I'm socially awkward. I can, but in being that socially awkward self, that's also me. That's also who Jesus made me to be. And so instead of, beating myself up over it, then you look for the bright side, the self-aware side. And it's the business is new. This whole thought process is new. This whole way of how I'm trying to think, and because I create content around it. So it's like, how do I be funny without bringing people down, or how do I be relatable without it turning into like a cry fest? I have no idea if I answered your question or not. I'm very sorry.
That's okay. It's like, hey, we're kind of celebrating the ADHD brain a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah. So no, I hear that though. Like, those of us in the counseling world, I mean, we're kind of aware of people's, instinctive defense mechanisms.
Right.
Humor can certainly be one of those. I definitely do that. It's really easy for me, especially in like social situations, to reach for like what's kind of funny, or I mean, it used to be really specifically like what's like irreverent and
Yes.
shocking.
Yes.
So, and I know that for me, there have been ways where that's very much been a power play. Like, I want to be the most powerful personality in the room, and I think I can do that by making people laugh or by offending people.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
Yes.
yeah. And in my cases, like that hasn't always been like the healthiest thing, or that hasn't
Right.
been a way of being very vulnerable, and it wasn't always coming from a place of self-love as much as like a place of insecurity. So this idea you're presenting of, and I imagine there's a journey to get there. Of I am kind of present with myself and like comfortable with myself. I can like not take myself too seriously sometimes.
Yeah, it's hard. You and I had a conversation about one of my stickers that says "Trauma made me funny," and you were like, at first blush, like I laughed, and then I was like, well, but should we be making fun of trauma? And so it's finding the balance between taking it seriously, but also um, if you can if you can find some way to connect with somebody, then that opens up a dialogue, that opens up an invitation to a conversation. And so, by me sharing that, hey, I made this "Trauma made me funny" sticker, which I've sold a lot of them. It's because people agree and people want to be seen, and they want to connect with others, because oftentimes our mental health makes us feel isolated, right? It's like, oh, I'm too weird. I'm too awkward. I'm not a good listener. I'm too messed up in the head. And so by attaching it to humor, it opens up a conversation, which you and I had, right? Because you said, I don't know if there's something to laugh about, and then I responded, we had a great conversation, and now I'm here. So like it works out. Like if you open the door to a connection, I don't think that's ever a bad thing. But it is hard because I don't want to diminish what people have gone through and what they are going through. And so it's a balancing act that I'm still trying to figure out. But I think trying is good, at least making the attempt. And people have purchased from me, and people have connected with the content I create. But yeah, I definitely don't want to come out as being flippant,
Yeah. I hear that, and I know you a bit, and you're not a flippant person.
Thank you.
Which I think a lot of people, like, if they, and I've heard this is true among, like, comedians and funny people, like, in general, is that, like, but beneath the smiles there's really a lot of story, often a lot of pain, and
Yeah.
you're a person who thinks deeply about things, and I guess in a way that maybe even makes like the laughter even more funny or more wonderful, because it has come out of a lot of thought
Yeah.
and everything. Um, yeah, I really love this idea too of just like you're saying, prioritizing the connection. Like, if
Hmm.
something opens up dialogue or opens up a way that I'm not alone in my experience, and
Right.
it's not only okay to be me, but it's okay to like have fun as me, or kind of
Yeah.
have fun with this aspect of my story. That seems like that might be hard to be like a starting place for people, but maybe like a place people get to, and maybe it's these connections that help us get to a place where we can be a little bit more just like free with ourselves.
Yeah, that's especially that's what I've found where the genesis of the idea was, I guess, was probably on TikTok, because so many people are just who they are, their real self. So they're comfortable talking about, this is my crappy childhood story, or I have ADHD and here's what I did, or I have autism and this is my stimming mechanism. And so I think I don't want to say generationally, but I think there's a generation of people that are alive right now that aren't trying to hide their mental health, aren't trying to cover it up, and so we reach this point where now it's like, okay, we're seeing that it's okay to talk about this stuff, and that we're not going to die, we're not going to be lonely, like, because of social media. Then we all can feel a little bit more connected. And obviously, social media can be a giant dumpster fire, obviously. But I found a lot of peace and comfort and hope by seeing that there are other people like me. And so that's part of the reason why I create these things, is to expand that, like, oh, like, you're awkward but funny, or sorry, that's the only one I can see, or like, kind of a mess, or and just really embrace this, because I know that you talk about spirituality a lot, and so you can't have a Prince of Peace without chaos, right? And so, like, my life is chaotic, my brain is chaotic, right? Going through it, a normal day is not a normal day for a lot of people, like, from in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But by embracing that, then I'm also allowing Jesus to enter that and be with me through it, instead of me trying to be this picture perfect Christian person.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Or I was even just thinking about, like, kind of when we both got on and we kind of went through this ritual of, like, how you doing? I'm fine. And then we're like, actually, no, not really. We're both
Totally
like,
stressed out.
yeah. And we had a laugh over it, which felt really good. I mean, physically feels good to laugh. And it also, like, I know for me, that felt really good to just be like, yeah, I don't have to be fake. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
to keep up this put together image, even as I really did up my hair and tried to look good today.
Right. Same.
Yeah. But yeah, it really does feel good to be like, yeah, we have these multiple aspects of our lives, and yeah, we are all struggling through things, different kinds of struggles. Life is really hard. It's really hard
Life
for
is
us.
really hard.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking, so I'm thinking about the way people can go through, like, a similar sort of experience and come out with really different, really, really different perspectives on it. I mean, like, super, super, super big example would be something like the Holocaust, where, I mean, you get people that come out, they're super bitter, they're super angry, but then you get someone like Corey Ten Boom, who will look back and, like, find the workings of God, like, all over it, and, like, come out like a stronger Christian, as a result
Yeah.
of it or something. And again, it kind of seems like, maybe on a smaller scale, something like that's going on here, where, two people can go through a similar-ish sort of trauma. One person becomes, like, really bitter, really devastated, gets stuck. Another person gets to where, I'm free enough and I can laugh about this.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious, what are some of your thoughts about what makes the difference there?
I think the difference is hope. Um, Hope that things can get better. As a Christian, there's hope for the future, because we know this world isn't our home. We know there's something better for us. And there's hope that we can also improve as people. Like, I don't want people to see my stuff and think that, like, I just stay where I'm at. Like, I am evolving. I'm a self-help obsessed person and trying to make myself better. And there's hope there. And the reason why I try to make myself better is because I hope that I can be better. And I know that I can be better. But if you're somebody who, and also life experience too, being able to look at the bad stuff that happened, and seeing how you overcame it. And so I think the difference between two people who experience something similar and had two vastly different reactions to it is there's hope. There's hope for yourself, for the future, for the world at large. Or you can just choose to be like, there's no hope. What happened to me was really crappy and that shouldn't have happened, and just carrying this chip on your shoulder instead of choosing to move forward with hope that things can and will get better. Because, and not to be all rainbows and butterflies, I do have my days where I'm like, today sucks and I don't know how I got through it and I don't want to get up again tomorrow. That's gonna, but at the end of the day, and this sounds cheesy, but we all have who have gotten through 100% of our bad days, right? And that's because there was something in us that got us through that. And I think it's hope, either hope for tomorrow's going to be better or next year is going to be better or whatever it is. But I think hope is the underlying spark that kind of keeps people from going down that dark, sad road of things just suck all the time.
Yeah. And some of my in a lot of my trainings, I'm really learning a lot about like internal family systems and these other modalities where you really dialogue a lot within your inner system. We talk about that a lot. Hope merchanting, or I know it's like hope mongering, a fun term. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, if all I have is me and all I have is now, well, on the one hand, I mean, there could be something kind of mindful, kind of soothing, present about that to just bring the focus into the moment. So there is use for that. But we do have to step out of that moment and being able to step into, I'm part of this bigger thing. There is a lot of strength and a lot of security there. And
Yeah.
I do notice a difference in the people that I work with, people who have something more than themselves. And it might just be, I have my kids I got to take care of. It might be,
Yes.
I believe in this project that I'm doing. It might be, I am looking forward toward, the kingdom of the Lord in the ages to come. And then there's people who don't have anything.
Yeah.
And it's not that they can't get better, however we're describing better, but they do seem like they have a harder time of it, because they're just like, this is hard, recovery is hard, mental health is hard, like, being a good person is hard, like, why am I doing this again? And I'm like, yeah, why are you doing this?
Why are you doing this? Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned kids, and I do have 2 kids, and I have a husband, and I have a dog. And there are days that I don't want to be the grown-up. I don't want to be the adult. I just want to lay on my couch with snacks and just watch TV all day. But I do have to take care of my kids. I do have to, do dishes or make food or whatnot, or just be. I still have to be present. It's not even so much about the doing things for my family. It's about just at least being present with them. Because my kids are, 10 and 11, and they're needy in different ways than they were when they were newborns and toddlers and whatnot. And so I think you really hit the nail on the head there, which is the difference between, the two different paradigms is having something bigger. And maybe that's the struggle that some people have, is that they don't have something. Well, they do have something, but they don't know what that something is. So
Yeah,
that's my thought.
I think it's a great thought. And I mean, I don't adhere to a lot of like, strict binaries, but like, this seems to be like a really true one, is like, having hope or not having hope. And I'm sure there's like a spectrum aspect to it, like,
Sure.
Sliver of hope or a really clear hope or something. But yeah, that does seem to really set people on different trajectories like that.
Yeah, I think hope and desire as well, right? Especially, I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm guessing in the work that you do with those going through recovery, then there has to be a certain level of desire, right? A desire to be better, and then it's like, but why? Why do you want to be better, and why do you have that desire to go through this rough process? Yeah,
Yeah,
those are good questions.
yeah. Yeah, there does have to on some level be a desire, or Well, I guess sometimes. There's different levels of motivation. It could be motivated to be better just because, like, I don't want to go to jail, or I don't want my wife to leave me, or I don't want my kids to hate me when they get older.
Yeah.
And so there can be those external motivations, which, if those get you moving and investing in yourself, that's good. That's the great entry level motivation. But yeah, like a more sophisticated level of motivation is like, hey, there's something I want out of this,
Right.
and I like the benefits of living well and being mindful and present and being healthy and happy. Um, so, uh, and then we could say, like, the even more sophisticated levels, like, truly being motivated by by love. But that's
Yeah.
maybe a bit of a tangent. Yeah, but I like tangents.
Me too. Me
Cool.
too.
Yeah. Um, So here's a fun tangent. So we're hinting at spirituality, Christianity in particular, and I'd be curious to hear some of your thoughts here, because it seems like like on the one hand, something like spirituality can be reduced to these pithy phrases and miscontextualized Bible verses and kind of be made like a bad joke. That could happen.
Yeah.
But it seems like there's also this other variation where we might say that, like, oh, this is like super sacred, like, don't laugh about Jesus, this is the faith, this is heaven and hell, like, it's not something to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
uh, but as in all things, it seems like there might be a healthy middle where we can kind of have some fun with our faith, or for sure it becomes a healthier thing. Anyway, maybe you get what I'm asking, but I'd be curious, what are some of your thoughts there?
I think it's hard to believe that Jesus and a group of guys didn't spend years together and not crack jokes. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if we're made in God's image and I'm funny and you're funny, then it would make sense that God also has a sense of humor. And if we, I'll say it, if I as a Christian, I forgot where I was going. If it was a good thought too, it's like, if I as a Christian know, I'm here on this earth to become more like Jesus and stuff, and he had a sense of humor. And I know where my life is going, then I think it's okay to make light of certain things, to make Bible jokes. You and I met at Bible college. Bible jokes are a thing, and they are still so funny,
They're
and the
still so funny.
memes and everything. And so I think if you, I think there's a level of actually like maturity in your faith where you can laugh at the jokes because you understand the joke, because you are so reverent and understanding of the genesis of where that comes from, right? Like you can't laugh at a Bible joke unless you know what it's referencing. The reason that you can reference it is because you studied it, um and I think it's okay to just laugh sometimes. I just, and I have moments too of pure reverence to the Lord, and gratitude for him and everything. And he knows that, and I know that. Um, but I don't think we're meant to take life so seriously all the time. And I think I would hope that Jesus would agree too. Like he hung out with like the bad people, and some of the bad people have the best senses of humor. So you can't tell me that he didn't,
Mm-hmm.
crack a joke or laugh at a joke sometimes.
Probably. Yeah. Yeah. There's this is reminding me a little bit. For my other show, we're reading the Screw Tape Letters by C.S.
Mm-hmm.
Lewis, and it's, for those who don't know, it's a course. It's a completely imaginative correspondence between two demons. Like, one, Uncle Screwtape is mentoring his demon Wormwood in like how to seduce a human to hell, and like the human's like becoming a Christian and like kind of growing, and Wormwood's trying to like foil him at every turn. And there's one letter that's about humor, and in one sense, there's, and I'm going to forget, Uncle Screwtape's terminology, but there's some forms of humor that can be very dangerous,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to forget which ones. So, so you should reference my other podcast or just read the book. Yeah, come on,
Yes.
people, read some books. uh, yeah, but I think he ends up listing like six different kinds of humor, and there's only like one and a half that are like the dangerous kind, and those are the kinds that letter's about. But there's some other kinds that they're like, yeah, we can't really use this so much.
Yeah.
And then in other letters, he's talking about how one of Wormwood's failures is when he allows the patient to like go for a walk in nature and read a book that he enjoys just because he enjoys it, and which resonates really deeply. And something like being really present in yourself and really truly just enjoying, like, wow, here's a really present moment and I'm really enjoying it. There's
Yeah,
something deeply spiritual about that and deeply
absolutely.
connective to God there. And it's like a very small push into like, and I can laugh about it or kind of make a joke about it. um but yeah, kind of given like what we're talking about, it's not trivializing something or making fun of someone, or not specifically being used to like avoid feelings, but again, like you're saying, it's if I've done the work to study the Bible, if I've done the work to study my own inner story, kind of the cherry on top is like, hey, there's a joke in there somewhere.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's really fun. Yeah. So I wonder, as you maybe interact with people, and I would presume laugh with people sometimes. I wonder, say someone's wondering, saying like, "Hey, I'd like to like try this. Like, I'd like to incorporate more humor into my life, and maybe even tell jokes about my own self." But I notice I have that tendency toward either like flippancy or self-deprecation, or
Mm,
like just like ill-timed jokes.
yeah.
I wonder if there's some specific things you might watch for, or are there some specific tells that a person can watch for within their own self that indicate, hey, this is like healthy humor, or this is less healthy humor?
Yeah. It goes back to finding that balance between being self-aware and self-deprecating. And the self-deprecating jokes are the easiest to make, right? It's so easy to just tear ourselves down. Like it's because we know ourselves. So it's so easy to be like, oh, I did this. I'm so dumb. Ha ha ha. And I think the further you get in your self-acceptance journey and the deeper you get and the more that you understand yourself, the less self-deprecating you'll be, because you've done the work to really think about who you are. So what's an example? I have a card that says on the front, then it says, sorry for what I said when I was mad. And on the inside, it says, I never learned healthy coping mechanisms. And you can't make that joke unless you've done some sort of work on knowing what coping mechanisms are, knowing what you learned growing up, and then recognizing that you need to or you are learning the healthy ones. So I think it's more a matter of maturity in your understanding of your own mental health. And doing the inner work to really try to understand, who you are and even how you got there, and a level of self-acceptance too. um, I think those who tend to do the tear themselves down type jokes, it's because it's a deflection thing, right? It's a defense mechanism, because they don't want to truly do the work and look into themselves and see how and why all that came to be. Whereas if you've done the work, then you understand it and you're better able to make the right joke because it's not coming from a place of self-loathing. It's coming from a place of self-acceptance, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense. And that particular card you're mentioning, there is an aspect of ownership to that as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
sorry what I said for when I was mad, and I'm not going to make an excuse about it. Like, this is my story, and I'm going to
Right.
be out and open with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And like I said a million times, it's hard to find that balance. But the reason why I can make these jokes is because like these are my stories. Like these are all my stories, and I'm on social media enough to know these are like other people's stories. Um, and these are people who are also talking about their issues, their stuff, their mental health. And there's a bond there, and there's oh, you've done the work too. Cool. We can connect now because we understand each other past just the flippant joke.
Yeah. Yeah, I really feel that. Or like one of the other ones, I'm thinking that you have this one where it's like, if you can read this, like the number overstimulated,
Yeah.
or
Yep.
which I mean, I think I have a much different relationship with like big crowds than I did when I was younger. Like when I was younger, I used to think I love big crowds and I love the energy and everything, and now I realize, oh no, I think that was like a cortisol high, and I just
Oh.
and so I mean, I like people, but yeah, I definitely don't prefer big crowds as much because they're just a lot more work. So
Yes.
but some a but I hear that where to kind of put that out, to put that on a shirt, to have that on a sticker, it's a way of signaling like, hey, I've had this journey. Oh, you've had that journey too. Cool. Hey, we
Right.
made it. And and there's nothing like shared experiences and shared language to just be like, hey, we have an easy inroad to connect here.
Yeah, it helps you find your people. I remember in college taking, I think it was abnormal psychology, and Jim Velez talked about that when you go through trauma or rough stuff, then you're on this rocky boat, right? And then you get off the boat and you're rocking back and forth, and then you get off the boat and you see other people rocking back and forth, and it's like, hey, you're rocking too, and you're one and the same. And so then you can make that connection. It's the same idea of like,
Mm.
oh, you're that way. Hey, I'm that way too. And it diminishes the loneliness that can be hard to overcome when you're neurodivergent or struggling with mental health stuff, you know?
I think so. Like as much as we were talking about having hope is super essential. Like the counterpart. Oh, I mean hopelessness is really really difficult, but like hopelessness seems really closely paired with loneliness and that sense of isolation.
Yeah.
Like, and where that isolation is also I feel like I'm prevented from connecting with
Right.
people in general, or I can't repair an important relationship. I mean, that's where the shame narrative comes in. So
Mm.
I mean, I've been nerding out recently, reading about like attachment and the neurophysiology of what happens when people like attune their right brains to each other, and how that affects shame and self concept. And yeah, there's some ways where it's when people are alone and isolated that all sorts of damage
Yeah.
happens. And
Right.
so, but having the presence, like the focus and the attention of an invested other, is a source of hope in so many ways.
Right. Because you can see the other person is still here too, and they're still living, and they're still um, thriving, and still functioning, and still doing things, which means that you can too. That you're not the only one. Um, Isolation sucks, man. Because I mean, whether it's real or it's just in your head, feeling like there's nobody that understands you, that nobody gets you, that you have nobody to talk to, like that's dark. That is some dark stuff. And I'm a hardcore introvert. I love my people, you know, um, but uh, but feeling like there's nobody that I can reach out to is a really dark thing, and it can beat you up. And um, it's like a black hole. Like the more you get into it, the harder it is to get out.
Yeah.
And we all need to know that we're not alone, and whether it's in person or whether it's like I said, on social media, like just knowing there are other people like you, it's it alleviates so much pain, even temporarily, to know it's like, okay, it's not just me, it's not just me, it's not just me, it's not just me. And there's where that hope lies too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. it's not just us. I mean, part of why, group therapy, support groups are such a big thing. Part of why, in the spiritual realm, like being part of a church community is so vital. I mean, and even in the New Testament, that like the writer of Hebrews, I mean, there's that very famous passage where he's talking about like, here's the cloud of witnesses and all of the other saints who are all like in this journey with us together too. And because that aspect of like these are all really difficult endeavors where we're not alone in them
Right.
on any level. But I guess the level where we can most feel alone is like within our own minds. Like if we, through various reasons, consciously or unconsciously, cut ourselves off from people. I mean, that's a really real experience, and that's a very difficult one, a very necessary one to overcome, and a very difficult one to overcome. So, as you've gone through your story, interacted with some other people, for someone who is just globally isolated, but you may be like interested in connecting with people, but also like kind of scared of it, or just kind of like daunted by the task, I guess. What are some ideas you might have for like, tiny steps toward more connection that people could take?
Oh gosh, you're challenging my introverted homebody self. Reconnecting if possible, connecting with maybe acquaintances that you haven't talked to recently, people who loved you before or love you, or you've enjoyed the company with, but they're not at the level of like your best friend, right? Just trying to reignite some sort of contact with somebody where if they ghost you, right, then it's not going to be devastating. But I think starting small. So like this sounds so terrible, but I have weekly reminders on my phone of like, text this person. And then on Monday it's text this person. On Wednesday it's text this person. And it's because I've found myself kind of isolated. I don't really know how to make friends now that I'm not in college anymore. So like all of my friends are from college, but we're also like all over the place. So I'm like, how do I make new friends? And so I've started at least trying to reconnect with people where it's like, hey, I have your number. Maybe we should try hanging out sometime. There's an acquaintance that I know, and we've, talked on the phone once or twice and in person. And I sent them a text and I was like, hey, this sounds weird, but I really think that we could be friends. So do you want to like get coffee sometime? And they were like, yeah, how else do you make friends outside of college other than like making it weird? I'm like, okay, cool. So like not being afraid to make it weird. And then just starting small, so being like, hey, how's your Tuesday going? And as much as I think texting and cell phone technology and social media has made true connection harder, I think it's also, in a sense, sometimes easier because you're not calling somebody out of the blue, right? You're not just like showing up at their house and being like, hey, I made you a cake. You're just like, hey, how's your day going? And trying to initiate some sort of contact. So I would say just like starting small. If you're not an introvert,
then come bake me a cake.
Right. My address is.
Yeah.
But there's all sorts of like meetups and stuff. There's stuff at like libraries and museums and happy hours and whatnot. Like go and try. Just be somewhere. Even if like you go somewhere and like it doesn't go the way you plan, like you can still be like, hey, I did that and I didn't die, so I can do that again. So I think it's starting small, and I think it amounts to trying too, which is advice I'm giving to myself right now.
Yeah. So. I'm right there. It's like, I mean, maybe it identifies like a little bit more extroverted, but my wife will definitely identify like I think she identifies as like a social introvert. Like, she'll like comfortably and enjoyably go out and be with people, but then she has to like recover for 3 days.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Which I love her. but yeah, like what kind of what you're talking about, like just make it weird and allow that this can be weird, and
Yeah.
to throw in the counseling jargon, here's where we get to practice our distress tolerance and our emotional resilience, and be like, I'm noticing
Oh, I
myself
hate those
feel.
words.
I know, yeah, but it's like I notice myself feeling weird and awkward right now, but like you're right, like those feelings themselves, don't kill you, and
Right.
should you discover, hey, we're actually both kind of feeling this way, and we can talk about it. I mean, there is something that can be very connective about that.
Right.
So yeah, there's room for just taking a risk and allowing that some things can be weird.
Yeah. And if it works out great, and if it doesn't, then go home and eat some ice cream and try again next week, like
Right. I guess that's
you're still
another thing.
here.
Yeah, that seems like another dynamic too, is to, as much as possible, not take it completely personally. Like not every person that is nice and that you have common interest with is going to be a good match for like a really deep friend.
Hmm.
And that's not your fault, and that's not their fault. It's just like some really wonderful people just are just gonna miss each other a little bit. I have
Right.
a couple of people like that.
Yes.
Yeah, and then, but yeah, some of my closer friendships have come from very surprising places. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, so yes, in another conversation we could talk about our most surprising friends, but we'd probably embarrass them. So
I mean, yeah, but that's okay.
yeah. Um, yeah, this is really great. I really appreciate this. Really appreciate getting to kind of talk about um, kind of this intersection of humor and spirituality and vulnerability, and kind of recognizing where we're all kind of muddling through this journey of life and
Yes.
trying not to do it alone, trying to do it with people. And um, there's, I guess you could say, there's a little bit of an interpretive move, kind of this really global interpretive move to say, hey, there's hope, therefore life is good, life is beautiful, there's potential here. and
Mm.
and granted, that might be a lens that we have that gets formed from somewhere, that comes from somewhere, and maybe not everybody has that lens, but I suppose if that's the case, then I guess we're inviting people to try on that lens and see see what's funny there.
Yeah. 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 Just try, like none of us know what we're doing. None of us know what we're doing. Like we put on a brave face, we jump on podcasts, we smile and say that everything's good when it's not. But in the end, like we're all just trying to be the best versions of ourselves, or just trying to make it through the day, or just trying to make a connection. And that's all we can do, is just try and then see what happens.
Yeah. Yep, that's growth and development as a way of life. And if I get a step further than yesterday, or I'm like a slight hair better than I was yesterday, then hey, that's good. And
It's good.
you keep trying. So
Yeah.
all right. Well, that then is how we do humor as a way of life. So yeah. Yeah. So I have loved this very much. So can you say again, so where are some of the places you and your merchandise exist in the world and on the interwebs?
Yeah, it's if I'm being honest shop.com is the website. And then if I'm being honest, or if I'm being honest shop, I forget which one. But you'll find me on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook. Is that all of them? And YouTube. I'm on all the things. So that's where you can find me if you want to check me out, even if you're not interested in buying stuff, which no pressure at all. But I do try and do daily content, relatable stuff, funny stuff, everyday stuff, just to build that connection with other people. So if you're on those platforms, come follow me and have some fun.
Yeah, yeah. And I've scrolled through the shop. There's some really fun swag, some really fun, t-shirts, and I see
Thanks.
you're wearing your ADHD brain sweatshirt, which is
I
a really great color.
am.
Yeah. I love the reference to like the cassette tape, which is an important piece of history that we need to preserve.
Isn't it so good? Thank you. Thank you
So,
very much. Thank you.
yeah, yeah. Oh my goodness, I was having this moment with my oldest. He's 10 and a half, and I forget exactly the context, but we were talking about like being on the internet. Well, we were talking about being on the internet and watching movies. And in my head, from where where I grew up, those were always separate things. Like we are either watching movies on video cassette or DVD on one
Right.
device, and then at a different time we go on the internet on a different device. And but for him, in his mind, he's like, why are you talking about those? Like, they're different. Like, aren't those the same thing? And I was like, oh yeah, because you've only ever known streaming services. And I felt old.
Yes, whenever my daughter and I recently watched something live on TV, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, another ad!" I'm like, "You have no idea, okay? This is magical time where you get to go get a snack, or use the bathroom, or get a blanket. Like, this is your time right now." But they don't know. They
Right.
don't know. They don't know.
The pain of commercials that you can't skip.
Right.
Anyway, so for more reminiscings about how technology has shaped us, and jokes about it. Yes, If I'm Being Honest by Toni Hammer. Some really great stuff, some really great thoughts. And yeah, Toni, thanks again for sharing some thoughts and some story and some laughs. And yeah, I wish you and your family the very best.
Thanks so much, Reese. Also to you and yours.
Thank you. Listeners, thanks for listening here. If you like this sort of thing, if this sort of resource is helpful, and if you have, $5 or $10 a month, you can go to patreon.com/outer circle and follow me there. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube and Facebook as well. All that info will be in the liner notes, and we'll be back soon with more fun ideas.